Hi, this is Frank Schaefer, and today I'd like to talk about something that has taken me a lifetime to discover, and that is, I guess the short title would be The Right Way to Live. And that's a presumptuous title because it presumes that there's a wrong way, and there is. And there's a way that falls flat and doesn't work, and I want to talk about that. You know, we're afraid of judging other people today, and we're scared of saying there's a right way to do things or a wrong way because it implies a kind of a moralistic attitude towards those who are not like ourselves. And I hope that is not what I'm talking about or what I'm implying here. I'd like to couch these terms in a way that I guess is closest to my heart, and that is, what would I want my grandchildren and my children to have learned from watching my mistakes and maybe from the things that perhaps Jeannie, my wife, and I have also learned to do right. In other words, what is the sum total of wisdom that I can pass on as I push toward my 71st birthday this year and 53rd year of marriage, having gotten Jeannie pregnant when we were 17 and 18. We've been together ever since and had huge ups and downs, but survived them because we gradually learned one lesson together that applies in so many different ways. And what is that? Well, there's two ways to live life. And of course, it's not black and white. There are all kinds of mixtures and in-between places and gray areas, but there are really only two life philosophies. Just two, that's it. There is one way to live life that I think leads to failure. And that is to look at everything we do, whether it's relationships or sexuality or career or travel or experiences or aims or ambitions, so-called bucket lists, through the lens of thinking that more is more. The more intense the experience, the more we have. How many places can I go? How much money can I make? How much stuff can I accumulate? How much can I consume? How much can I buy? It is kind of the philosophy you see in the billionaire class, 400-foot yacht. One of our billionaires has with a figurehead carved to imitate his girlfriend and her body and all the surgical work she's had done to make that body into, I guess, what he figures is his fantasy. Another billionaire who's now fathered 12 children, at least through 3 or 4 different women, including artificial insemination, as if somehow more is more. The way we shop on these insane holidays like Black Friday, looking for that next big screen TV, whatever it may be, this whole tendency towards extreme sports, including one fool of a billionaire who built an unreliable submersible and killed 4 other people and himself going down to look at the Titanic. I want to live in the full. He died doing what he loves, and it's always jumping off a cliff or hang gliding into a tree, whatever. Okay, fine. He died doing what he loved to do in his submersible. But that whole philosophy of trying to live life to the fullest really isn't to the fullest at all. It brings me to the second alternative and the way to live, and what we can have is ambitions that actually work for ourselves and for our family. And here's how I would put this. It's not to live as widely and as largely and as intensely as possible. It is to live as deeply as possible, to the fullest. To, for instance, get to know one person in a relationship, both sexual and spiritual, physical, mental, cohabiting cooperatively, as deeply as is possible in one lifetime, and realize that you're never going to come to the end of that depth. It is to sit quietly in a gallery and really look at one painting and try to understand something about the artist and the context and how the way we see that over the generations has changed. What does Botticelli's Primavera mean to us now? What did it mean at a time in rebellion against the stupidity and rigidity of a 12th century, 13th and 14th century Roman Catholic Church that was anti-science, anti-mythology, and Botticelli started painting these beautiful mythological figures in protest, backed by the Medici family who shared his vision. What does that mean to us today? Depth. It is having a garden that I plant with my grandchildren in the spring, harvest through the summer and into the autumn with them, eating the food they have planted, is such a different experience than, for instance, taking them to the supermarket and saying, now here's 1,000 things you can buy. Plant your own food, harvest it, learn to cook with your grandfather. I teach my grandchildren to cook. It's a whole different experience than simply saying, hey, we have an unlimited budget. Go to the food market and buy everything in sight that you want and just cram your mouth full and start eating before you even check out. That's the mentality of jumping off cliffs and all these billionaires and millionaires booking flights on space travel, tourism, somehow thinking, they're all going to be Kirk in Star Trek if they go up there for 30 seconds and experience weightlessness. Living large, the big experience, the big thing. And yet you look at a lot of these folks' individual lives and they're unable to sustain relationships. They're unable to sustain marriage. They don't have good relationships with their children. Their grandchildren, if they have any at all, barely know them. And it's the same in the area of career. Those of us who look at career as a job, something we do, often passionately, say with my writing, something that I do passionately, but nevertheless, we do not look to the career title of author or novelist or writer or neurosurgeon or PhD or office worker or manager or head of the HR department or Marine or soldier or Coast Guard, whatever it may be, is not our defining characteristic. The defining characteristic is the only mirror that we can trust, no matter how we're living. And that is what we see reflected in the eyes of the people who know us best. That's the only truth you'll ever hear or see or experience in this lifetime. Everything else is BS. So you can be head of the HR department, but not see the intimacy that you long for reflected in the eyes of your children, that you have sacrificed to your career. And in that sense, you have not lived deeply and fully, even if your next vacation costs $125,000 to go to Antarctica and snowshoe with them across some place for 3 days and spend $1 million getting there and back in your own jet or flying first class, whatever it may be. That's kind of living widely and on a big scale, but actually it's very small. It's very pathetic. It's very pitiful. Because that's not where the real experiences of life are. Unless I'm completely mistaken about everything I've learned about other people. So, when you get to our billionaire class and these fools that have challenged each other to a cage fight to prove God knows what, talk about man-child toxic masculinity. I mean, good grief, it's like a cartoon. These two idiots. They're 50, 60 years old, and this is what they do. It's pathetic. It's sad. These are little people. These are shriveled people. These are silly people. I would be so disappointed if my grandson, Jack, who's 12 years old, came up with an idea like this. I would talk to him and just say, hey, listen, you need to grow up. But the thing is, he won't, because he's living in a family that lives deeply rather than is consuming everything in sight in terms of trying to have experiences on that kind of level. So, as we look at these alternatives, we have to understand that they have ramifications. They live wide and consume everything in sight, whether it's the quantity of vaginas you've penetrated as a male, or whether it's the quantity of stuff you buy, or the quantity of travel you've done, or your global footprint as you have more and more expensive vacations, or you're into extreme sports and there's no cliff you haven't jumped off yet, and you're going to climb Everest next. If that's your philosophy, you have to also understand the ramifications. That kind of consuming of life rather than delving deeply and gratefully into the essence of it is actually consuming our planet. It is what is destroying our environment. It is destroying every ecosystem we have. It is the disease of our age, and that is the inability to self-discipline and say no to ourselves, and instead go deep instead of wide. Get to know that one person really, really well and love them passionately as you delve into a study of the real human spirit and how humans can grow together in relationships, be they gay or straight or trans. That's not the point. The point is the depth of the experience. The difference between opening a wonderful novel in a beautiful landscape and having the quiet and inner peace and stillness to read and the attention span rather than sitting there with this stupid device and being distracted all the time, or having kids young enough. I know that's not a popular subject these days in our career-oriented world, so that having children matches the cycle of fertility, which means if you ever have grandchildren, you're going to have the energy to participate in their life. One of the great serendipitous gifts Jeannie and I discovered having our children young. We're around doing full-time childcare for grandchildren, and they live next door because we're able to help. And so we have a reward, as it were, for having pursued depth, sometimes unintentionally, having it forced upon us rather than this kind of width of ridiculous experience. So I would urge people who are young enough to shape something that's left of your lives to not listen to the career as bullshit that is preached to us from our corporations, as if somehow your validation is to do all this stuff before you commit to another human being or have a child. And I would just look at our billionaire class and just say, these are failed people. These are sad little people. These are cartoons of everything money can do to destroy lives, not anything we would follow. And I would just say, as we make our own choices and how we go forward, if you choose depth and substance over quantity, quality over quantity, you will have memories that really last in the same way that memories of experiences shared with other human beings we love are so much deeper and more long-lasting than stuff that we get. Stuff wears out, it means nothing. And if you care about our planet, you are not going to be a consumer of experiences that also destroy our planet. Instead, you're going to be someone who looks into each moment of the day as equally important, not that expensive vacation where you get this little thrill of adrenaline, but a thrill of adrenaline from something ordinary, which actually is where the extraordinary resides. Lovemaking in the middle of the day with a wife you've been with for a long time. Taking care of that grandchild who looks to you as the stability, the rock in their life that they can always depend on, and they come to you and ask you questions, and you care for them. And there's art materials spread out on the porch table so that they can sit there painting and drawing while you read to them. Something they will never forget that actually feeds your soul. Far more than some adrenaline infused temporary experience at the end of a long, expensive, special, high-end vacation, or whatever it may be. Thank you. My name is Frank Schaefer.